Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am so very pleased to have with me today a very special guest. She holds degrees from McGill University, Charlton University, and has a PhD in educational administration from the University of Alberta. She is a credentialed evaluator and a certified teacher. Since starting her consulting firm in 1985, she has conducted over 130 program evaluation studies in education, health, and research. She has served on the boards of both the Canadian Evaluation Society and the American Evaluation Association. She has received several awards, including the CES Contribution to Evaluation in Canada Award. She's a fellow of the Certified Management Consultants of Canada and the Canadian Evaluation Society. She has taught program evaluation and research methods to master's students for many years. She is also known for her popular book, Consulting Startup and Management, a guide for evaluators and applied researchers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my professional hero, Gail B. Barrington.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for that great introduction. There are a couple of people, I'm looking at the chat box, there are a couple of people with problems with the audio. Hopefully they'll be able to fix it because most people seem to be hearing okay.
Yes, okay. And thank you guys for indicating in the chat where you're from. I see, hello, Zara from Jamaica, from Uganda, from Canada. So very nice to have you with us today. We are just under 100 persons so far, and more persons are coming in. So we will be speaking, we'll be here today for a little under an hour. So for like the first 50 minutes, I will have a chat with Gail. And you can post your questions in the chat box. And the last 10 minutes, you'll get an opportunity. I will choose from the questions, your questions to ask Gail, right? So without further ado, Gail, this book, your book, changed my professional life. After reading it, well, I had the privilege of meeting you a couple of years ago at the American Evaluation Association conference, where I did your professional development workshop. And that inspired me to go get the book. I read it, and then I made the switch to start my own business. And what I find fascinating is that usually evaluators or researchers, when they write a book, it's about a research method or an evaluation method. But you chose to write a book on startup and management. So my first question to you is, what motivated you to write such a
book? Sorry, I couldn't quite hear your question at that. Could you say it again?
Yes, what motivated you to write a book on startup as opposed to on research methods or evaluation methods?
Yeah, well, I don't think that there are very many books in consulting that are useful. And so I thought that it would be a good idea to share my experience. Now, my background's in teaching, and so I like to share and teach, what I've learned. And being a consultant has been a very long journey. And in some cases, I think I've, suffered some setbacks and been hurt in some ways, just because I didn't know what to do. And there were no role models for me. And so I thought maybe I can help other people. So that's how I got started.
That at the time you didn't have any book to help you. What were some of the challenges that you faced when you were starting your consultancy or in your career at that time?
Well, I guess the biggest one was fear. It's a risk. Is it going to be a success? And I think that that's something that's always in our minds. And I was just at a particular point where I had been teaching part-time at the university. I had a small child. And then a year came along when there was not going to be a course for me to teach. And on the side, I had been doing some consulting projects in evaluation. And so I thought, okay, I got a choice here. What am I going to do? I'm either going to wait and hang around until the university needs me again, or I'm going to take control and start to do something that I think I like a whole lot. And so I chose the consulting option.
And I think I had that as well, you know, will it succeed? Will I get enough business? So one thing that a lot of persons always ask me when they want to transition into consultancy, how will I land consultancy gigs? Or if they're employed and they want to make a switch, how will I get jobs? Where are the jobs? Where can I find the jobs and the consultancy gigs if I want to go on my own? What advice or tips?
Well, first of all, you need to know very clearly what it is you want to consult in. So you need your own specialty. I don't think you can just be a total generalist. And so the first thing you need to do is very carefully analyze your own experience and skills and what you really love doing the most. And then you sort of blend that all together and say, okay, what kind of a consultancy does this look like? So first of all, I think you start with yourself and what you can do well. And then secondly, you look at the marketplace and you say, okay, what's out there? What can I offer that people will want to buy? And so that takes quite a bit of research, which of course, if you are evaluators already, you've got good research skills. So it's just a question of taking those skills and applying them to the marketplace. And then getting out there and doing a lot of networking and talking to people informally. And I don't recommend, you know, putting out advertisements or going for sort of a hard sell approach or anything like that. It's all networking. It's all who you know and the people that they know. And so you should perhaps set up a marketing plan and list 5 people that you know who would be willing to have lunch with you and talk to you about, well, these days it would be probably be a Zoom lunch, but anyway, and talk to you for at least an hour about their work and what they're aware of in the marketplace. And the last thing before you let them go is a snowball thing, so that you would say, okay, well, that's been great. Who else do you know that I could talk to? And so you start to build a list from there. And you go around and talk to people. So that's one thing. You need to be clear about what organizations in your particular area where you live need in terms of skills and what skills you have to offer, and then try to find a match between the two.
Emerging professionals like our emerging evaluators, we would say, that may say, I don't even know 2 persons to invite for lunch. You know, what tips could you give on how to do it?
In a case like that, I would say you probably need to work for somebody else before you work for yourself. And so perhaps you could be visiting consultants in your area. And what you can do are what's called information interviews. Now I keep saying in your area, and yet here we are, and it's the world is our area. And so I don't think you should really limit yourself to just the local, but it's a good place to start, at least to build your confidence a little bit, I think. And then certainly you can apply the same marketing techniques across the world. But if you're young or brand new in the field, I think the best thing to do is to work for somebody else. And even, you know, just leave your ego at the door and be willing to work as a research assistant for an evaluator who is successful already, and start to observe them and their skills. See how they interact with clients and think about what you like and also what you don't like about the way they operate. It's a really great learning experience. So that would be one way to start. Another way, I guess, would be through a university that you're familiar with to look for evaluation projects that possibly professors are working on, and see if you can start working with them, just to build your toolkit and your skills. And at the same time, then you can be secretly planning to start your own consulting business. Give yourself enough time, let's say maybe 2 years. In 2 years, you have a vision of yourself becoming an independent consultant. And in the meantime, you read everything you can, as many books as possible on business skills. You can take courses online. Accounting is one that you really need to have. Some good computer skills would be another. Communication skills, negotiation skills would be really important as well. So I mean, it's endless in terms of the types of skills that you can learn and add as you go along. And then you're never finished. Once you start working for clients on your own, you have endless possibilities, and you're always learning.
These are such useful tips, a lot of which is also covered in Gail's book. I see questions coming in like, Gail, where can I get an electronic version of your book? Is that available? This one on
Yeah. Unfortunately not. When it was published in 2012, I suggested that an e-book would be a good idea, and Sage, the publishers, weren't quite there yet. So that opportunity was lost. All I can say is that it is available. It is available in Europe through Sage in the UK, and the price of the book has recently been reduced. So in American dollars, I think it's $45. So before that, the price was, I thought, out of range, because obviously if you're starting your own business, you don't want to spend a lot of money on resources. The other thing, though, is that I've written many blogs. So if you visit my website, I think in terms of blogs, once I was writing the book, I started writing blogs right away. So I've got like 33 blogs on consulting skills. And more recently, the last 10 of those or so were focused a little more on people transitioning from a career in something, let's say the government or whatever, an organization, to independent consulting. And so they were more focused on, I guess you could say, older consultants, but people have told me it didn't matter, that the information was still perfectly useful. And also on my website, there's, I think, 29 or so frequently asked questions that were actually a column that I wrote for a newsletter for the American Evaluations Topical Interest Group for Independent Consultants, their TIG, T-I-G, on independent consulting. And so if you had a specific question, you could look there and you might find some kind of an answer that would help.
Great. And some of the resources that Gail has spoken about, as I said, on her website, I will share a link to the website later on. There's a section for handouts that you can already go and look at some of Gail's work that's already placed there. And don't worry, you will get a follow-up email as well with the links to where you can access these great resources that Gail has spoken about. So, Gail, if I can just ask you, throughout your career, like, what were some of the mistakes that you're willing to share with us that you made, that you would maybe advise someone, look out for that, maybe to do it differently?
I think one was falling in love with the project, liking it so much that I was willing to ignore the fact that the political environment in which it was situated was really getting worse and worse. And so, of course, at the end of the day, I eventually ended up being fired, as everybody else had already been fired. And so I just wasn't cluing into how bad things actually were, because I loved my work. I was busy collecting data. I was out in the field a lot and so on, and really not as aware. So that was a big learning, I think. I'm not getting your audio right now.
Yes, can you hear me now? Okay,
yes.
Well, I was thanks for sharing that example. I think several persons can relate to it as well, that it's good to be aware of everything that's happening, you know. And a question here that I see is, you know, how do you manage commitments with several consultancies at the same time? I think this was an area of your book speaking on time management, but I'll ask it again, is that this person wants to know, how do you keep on track without losing the overview if you have so many moving parts, so many consultancies and commitments?
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, that doesn't happen overnight usually. I mean, most people start out with 1 or 2 projects and you build up from there. And I would say you need to have really good office systems set up for yourself so that everything that has to do with accounting, with, you know, if you have some contractors working with you, your billing process for sure, paying your own bills, so that, you know, the finances are secure, that you're having a good relationship with your bank, that you have a line of credit when you need it. These all sound very mundane. Insurance is another one that's really important. Liability insurance, or sometimes it's called errors and omissions insurance. Same thing. And so, you know, you don't start out on day one with all these pieces in place. But what you have to do is constantly be trying to build your business into a successful business, because it's not just something you're doing off the side of your desk. It's the focus of your work. And so you need to have these systems around you that are smoothly operating and functioning. And I think that's a really big lesson.
Thank you so very much. And I can relate to it in that I really don't enjoy the mundane aspects, but I have to do the bookkeeping, the administration, the timesheets, the invoicing, but it's all unnecessary evil, that I would say. And it's good sometimes to even get automated processes that can help. So you can handle more content specific work, you know?
You know, absolutely true. But I've found that I have to address finances first thing in the morning. It's not the thing you leave till the end of the day. So even if you don't like it, you know, you don't want to look in the bank and see how things are doing and send out your invoices on time. I've found out that even a couple of days late, if you send your invoices out 2 days late, 5 days late, you're actually losing quite a bit of money, because it takes that much longer for the money to be transferred to you. And so you have to pay attention to that first if you want to keep the doors of your business open. Now, I didn't actually answer this person's question. Sorry, I got sidetracked. How many projects? And so, as I said, you might start out with 2 or 3. And when you have more time, that's the time you spend getting your systems set up and organized. Then you get more work and you don't have time to do that. And so you have to rely on the processes that are already in place. I think for me, I've had 5 to 7, or maybe once 9 projects. I was completely insane at that point. I couldn't handle it. 5 was definitely a max. And so what I tried to do, and of course you don't have control over the marketplace to that extent, but that there would be, say, 1 or 2 ongoing projects that would be perhaps a year long or even longer if possible. And then those would sustain you. And then you would have shorter projects as well, maybe a 3-month project, or a couple of 6-month projects, or maybe a 1-month project, or maybe a speaking engagement. So you have kind of a variety, but I think it's important to really try to find a couple of longer term projects that can be an anchor for you. So you have some security that your rent is going to be paid, for example.
Mm-hmm. I like that, Gail, because that has helped me in the past, where I have like my 2 long-term contracts that keeps the lights on for me. So these are like a contract for 3 years with one client. And that's good, because then I can be more picky in the short-term work that I take or don't take, you know, and I don't have to worry, how am I going to pay my bills? Now, Samantha asks, what are the tools you use for time management and tasks such as accounting and reporting?
Okay, I'm going to confess that accounting is not my favorite thing. And so I hired a bookkeeper. And that was more than 20 years ago. And she was just here yesterday. She comes in now just a couple of times a month because I'm not doing very much consulting. I'm busy doing other things. So she's helped me out all this time and has used some program like Simply Accounting, I think was the program that she used. In terms of time tracking, there are lots of good programs available. Some of them are free that are online. But it's essential that you do keep track of your time, because in some cases that's how you bill, according to the number of hours you've put into a project. Even if you don't do that, you still should be tracking your time, because it's important to you to be able to do an analysis of where you are spending your time and whether you're putting too much time into one project and avoiding another. So at the end of the month, you should take a really good look at your timesheets and see how you have used your time.
Okay, great. I hope that answers the question for you, Samantha. And Gada, I hope I got your name correctly, asked, how do you deal with clients who want to haggle over price to reduce your rates? How do you handle?
Okay, well, we have to backtrack from there, because there's a process involved with actually coming up with your per diem, which is your daily rate. And the formula is in my book, okay, which I got from a book on management consulting, because in the early days, one of the challenges is, sorry, this is a long answer. One of the challenges I found was that people weren't that willing to listen to me. Who was I? Nobody in particular. I was a young woman, and how would I know what they needed? And so I needed more credibility, more credentials. And so I decided I'd become a certified management consultant. And the advantage of them was twofold. One was they have a code of ethics. And so I could always quote that in my proposal and say, these are the ethics that I stand by. And the other advantage was that I was able to purchase errors and omission insurance through that professional organization. It was quite a bit cheaper. And so all these years I've maintained my certified management status and CMC. Now then, I forget what was the original question? Yeah, haggle. So
Yes.
yeah, so getting back to how you come up with your per diem, you have to figure out what your costs are. It's not enough to look over across the street at somebody else who's a consultant and say, oh, well, they're charging X, so I should either charge the same or more or whatever. There has to be a rational basis for your per diem. And so you need to go through the process of figuring out how much all your expenses are, what kind of a personal income you want for the year, and leave yourself, say, a 10 to 15% margin for the unexpected. And so you figure that out, and then you figure out how many work days are you going to work during the year. And you may only want to work part-time. You definitely need to take off holiday time, because you need to look after your own mental health. And so summer vacation, Christmas vacation, family time, weekends. I mean, I know you end up working on weekends, but you shouldn't start out thinking you're going to work on weekends, so that you don't make it too regular. So this is all put into a formula, and that total expenses, so that's office expenses plus your salary plus the 10 to 15% divided by the number of days that you're willing to work in a year. And that's how you come up with your per diem. And so if a client says to you, oh, well, you shouldn't really charge that much, and why don't you do it for X amount less? Then you can say, well, I'm sorry, but I have to keep my doors open. And this is actually how much it costs me to do this work. And if they don't want to pay it, you don't want to work for them.
You have different rates depending
No,
on the client,
no.
like a big foundation versus a struggling little NGO woman.
Yeah. I mean, people think about that and they say, let the big fish pay for the little fish. Okay. And so, I mean, I have lots of colleagues who do that. And I thought, it's not a good idea to change your daily rate. And I have found that even small not-for-profits are willing to pay my rate. But what I do is negotiate how much of the work I'm going to do. And so I get their staff more involved than I might in another type of organization. And I offer to do training. And so they benefit from that as well.
Okay. All right. Great. So Abando asks, Gail, have you ever had a client who doesn't agree with your results, like your evaluation findings, and then without basis, they want to terminate your contract? If you had this experience, how did you deal with it?
Well, I've had a number of experiences where they certainly have not invited me back. So I'm assuming they didn't like what I had to say. And it is possible that they might fire you because they don't like your final results. And so to protect yourself against that, I would say be very careful to do milestone billing so that it's not like you're going to lose the whole contract at the end, that they haven't paid you anything. But be very careful to offer a number of deliverables. I used to do status report, depending on the size of the project. It might be a quarterly status report or a monthly status report to report on, what I've been able to do against what the work plan said I was going to do, and to identify any surprises or successes. And clients really love a status report. But if you get to the end of the road and they don't like the final results, you've at least protected yourself by having milestone billing so that you're not going to lose the whole price of the contract. But the other thing I would say is, why is this happening at all? If you were working collaboratively with the client all the way through the process, and they knew what was happening, they knew about, your field work and the types of questions you were asking, and they've been involved all along the way, then there are no surprises. And so I've always tried to have a policy of no surprises. I mean, and then there's staff turnover. Sometimes you start out working for one client and then they get shifted to another job and you have somebody new coming in who probably, for whatever reason, wants to, make their own mark, and maybe they don't like you, or maybe they don't like the type of approach you were taking. I had a situation where I was doing case studies, very detailed case studies. Management changed. The new guy came in and he was a sort of statistics type. He wanted surveys. And I ended up getting fired from that project. They trumped up an excuse, but the reason was that they no longer were engaged and they no longer bought into the whole purpose of the evaluation. You never can tell. And so you need to be careful and protect yourself as you go along, and always be aware that it could happen.
Mm-hmm. And I love the advice about getting payments per milestone, like maybe a percentage right upon signing of contract. Yeah. You get a percentage once the ink is dried, and then the first deliverable, another percentage. So I think that is very good advice. I learned the hard way as well. Because before I didn't used to do that,
Yeah.
Yes. And someone asked, now in the time of COVID, where networking opportunities seem to be less, what are maybe some ways to go about still doing networking? If there's any insights you can give on how to do that.
I would network through my colleagues. That's probably the best way. And by the way, they seem to be very busy. And so I think that it'd be a good idea to give a few of them a call, have a Zoom conference with, several of them one at a time, and say, so, I understand you're doing a lot of work right now. What are some tips that you could give me in terms of how to access some of these types of contracts? And you never know what's going to happen. They might have too much work and say, come and work with me on this project. You could end up with a contract before you're finished. But so I would say network mainly, first of all, with colleagues, and find out where the work is coming from.
Good. I hope that answered your question. Yes, very good advice. I'm going through to look I know I had said I would get some of these questions at the end, but the questions keep coming in rapidly. So I said, let me incorporate them in our talk. Right. Okay. So this question is coming from someone in Africa who is asking, how do you break into the West European market as an evaluator?
Gee, I live in Canada, and so I really, maybe I'll turn that question over to you, Anne.
Well, it's an interesting question because I myself am Jamaican, living in Europe, and it wasn't always very easy, despite the fact that I live in Europe, because most of my experience was gathered in the Caribbean, right? But what I found help personally is what Gail referred to earlier, when you align yourself with someone who is already where you want to be. So when Gail spoke about taking on like a research assistant role, I would say the same in this case. If you're trying to break into the European evaluation scene or the American or the Canadian and you don't have the experience or the expertise, I would say align yourself with someone who's seasoned there in a junior role, be humble, work with that person, volunteer your time so you can build up connections and network, and then people now can start to know of you and to know your name. Because like when I even moved to Europe, nobody knew me. I didn't go to school in Europe. I don't have any professional circles at the time. I have now in Europe. So I wasn't part of any club. I didn't even speak the language. I didn't speak Dutch. But that is the strategy I used. That then over time, people learned more about me. So I stopped becoming the Jamaican and now just the consultant. So that is my advice that I would give. Also, what I get a lot, I'm shifting gears a little bit now, are people who say to me, Anne, I've worked in development for over 10 years now, 20 years. I really like the evaluation field, but I've been like a program manager. I'm the one helping to write the evaluation reports, commissioning evaluations, reviewing the reports, even collecting data. And I want to transition into evaluation. But when I apply for this position or try to get these consultancies, they say, oh, but you've always been a program manager or whatever title. So, Gail, how would you advise someone who maybe didn't do studies that says evaluation? In my time, you didn't have a MSc that said evaluation anyway. But how would you advise someone who has the evaluation experience informally, but not officially? How could they transition into being taken serious as an evaluator?
Well, I have a Canadian answer, and that is that we have a credentialed evaluator designation, which you can apply for. It's international. Anybody, we have, I think, 8 or 10 international CEs, credentialed evaluators. And there's a process you have to go through, which includes filling in a portfolio of your skills. And you need 2 years equivalent experience as an evaluator. So, I mean, if you were at all interested, I would suggest start your application. You've got 2 years to fill it in. I think it's 2 or 3. And then start taking short courses. There are tons of webinars around. Make sure you join the evaluation organizations. CES, Canadian Evaluation Society, has webinars. American Evaluation Association offers many webinars. I'm not so sure, but I'm sure that the European Society also has training programs. And then just start to build up your skills and start to look for small projects that you can assist on as opposed to taking over the full project. And people will be thrilled to get hold of you because of your wonderful experience in the field. And so let's say you complete your credentialed evaluator, so you have the designation, and now they can't say that you're not qualified anymore. So that would be one way to do it, as if you didn't want to go back to school, let's say, and get a master's or something like that in an online program.
Ask it. What makes a good evaluator? Because you're talking about the credentialed evaluator. I know that I'm in Canada. Canada is more advanced in giving, making persons credentialed than here in Europe. But I know it's a broad question, but what is a good evaluator? Somebody wants to know if they're good.
Oh, I think you need good communication skills. That's probably number one. So, of course, you need good technical skills. And so there are the evaluator competencies, right? And there are 5 domains for competencies, including, ethics and reflective practice is very important. Technical practice, situational awareness, business practice, and communication skills. And those are sort of the 5 areas, certainly that we in Canada have identified as the evaluator competencies. And you can look online, the Canadian Evaluation Society website, look up evaluator competencies, and you'll find out what they are. Then you just take those skills and start to say, okay, well, what have I got in these areas? And then start to shape your marketing towards demonstrating that you have them and can use them.
Okay, great. So guys, please go and check out the sources, the websites that Gail just mentioned. If you're interested in knowing what are some of the competencies that you need to have as an evaluator. I know some persons ask as well that they do a lot of the M in the E, a lot of the monitoring and not necessarily the evaluation side, how to make that transition as well. So go check it out. Okay. Gail, I know you also did some research on consulting after the age of 50, because earlier I touched on emerging evaluators, but I respect and appreciate that our audience, it's not a homogeneous group. And there might be persons who are over the age of 50 who would like to transition into consultancy. Is it too late? Is it still possible?
No. It's never too late.
Okay.
Or I would have given up a long time ago. I mean, I'm still teaching and writing a book, and I won't tell you how old I am, but it's enough. So,
okay.
I think that what you do is you bring the richness of your experience to the consulting practice, which a young evaluator, much as I love them and I teach them and so on, they can't possibly have that same, experience, all those battle scars that you have from lessons learned the hard way and so on. And your sense of organizations and how they operate is something which is kind of intuitive, but you build that up over the years. And so you are just the sort of person people are looking for. And so it's simply a question of envisioning yourself as an independent evaluator, a successful person who has something to offer, and people will find you very helpful.
That study, because I know you spoke to consultants over 50. And
I did.
Yeah. So there's some of the highlights that might be helpful for persons listening to us. That because I know I have, so in New Directions, which is a journal, Gail did a study on consulting after 50, redirection and reinvention for career evaluators. Electronic copy is in the handout section of this webinar, so you have access to it. You can go and read up a little bit more. I liked the article because it was interesting to hear from the voices of persons what were some of their fears. As they say, they thought, okay, will they get enough clients? Will they be taken seriously? And also, but at the same time, they felt it was the right time, phase of life to do it when the kids were maybe grown and out the house. But maybe, Gail, it was your study. So maybe you can
well, it's good. You got a lot out of it, I can tell. So I think that people over 50 are, if you think about the life stages that you go through, you know, you've got your basic expenses paid for. If you have a house, you've paid most of your mortgage off. Your kids are grown and maybe you've paid for their education or whatever already. And you're finally kind of going, now what, you know, and or maybe you've just downsized. A lot of people do that and find that they actually have more financial freedom as a result of that. But this then gives you the chance to really expand your horizons in terms of what you have to offer. And I interviewed 13 people. Now, I did a broad call for participants in the study. I did it on LinkedIn. And so I had 13, one from Australia, one from New Zealand, two from Canada. The rest were from the United States. And all but two became successful consultants. And two of them did not. One of them because I don't think he had the organizational skills or really, you know, was clear enough on what he would have to offer. And the other one was because she had family, she had daughters who she still had to pay for. She was a single parent. And the other thing, of course, for Americans is the health insurance demands are extensive. I'm sure they're only worse now with more people getting ill. And so she couldn't afford to give up her job. But everybody else, for whatever reason, felt it was time, or else they were sort of pushed out of their jobs. There was a change in 2008. You know, a lot of people were laid off, and they just took it and ran with it. And they have been so successful. And I was so thrilled. I met several of them in person last fall. We did a panel presentation together at the American conference. It was really fun to meet them. But so I learned a lot from them and their experiences. So I was really happy to write that article.
Okay, great. It's unfortunate to hear of the two persons that didn't succeed, but the majority did. So my question is everyone cut out to be a consultant? Or some persons should just stay in regular employment?
Yeah. No, especially if you're particularly social. If you're a social person and you need to be talking to people, and some people talk in order to learn, they process by talking. I would say if you're an introvert, this is perfect for you. That introverts make great consultants because you spend so much time on your own. Now, you have to have good social skills in order to be, you know, a good communicator and enjoy people. And I mean, certainly I love field work. I just love field work so much. Just sitting down and talking to people about the things that are important to them is something that I've always really, you know, valued. But you also spend hours and hours on your own, and there's nobody around, and you're just working on your computer. And so you need to be able to be comfortable with that. So so that's one thing. I mean, I wrote down a list of, so what makes a good evaluator, apart from the competencies, but just personality wise, it's not for everybody. I think one thing you need is you need to be reflective, because I've always found that every project I've done, I've sort of used it to bootstrap myself up for the next project. So I'm improving every single project by taking my learnings, whether that was something I would do or I'd never do that again or whatever. I'm still always improving. And then every once in a while, there would be sort of a great leap forward where I would have innovated in some way that really made a big difference. And then I would certainly carry that along. And so the other thing that I always did then was take those innovations and those reflections to the conferences that I attended every year and talk to my colleagues about them, do workshops, do papers and presentations as a way to really encapsulate what my own learning had been. And I think that that's been a big part of it for sure. So having a good network of colleagues is always very important. And I just enjoy having colleagues so much. I mean, I hear from them one way or another every day. There's something going on. And often there's a way that you can assist or be involved in some way.
Okay. And I thought consultation or consulting was a lonely business. It isn't. Wherein you're just working on your own, because I think that's maybe one of the perception that when you go out on your own, that you're not going into the office somewhere. But what has your experience been? Would you agree with that or not, or disagree?
Sorry,
The
so what's
isolation, the
isolation?
isolation. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the interesting thing with COVID, and I was just talking to a good colleague, actually, a man that I mentored for a number of years, and we've worked together on many projects. And he and I were having a Zoom call, and he said, well, I really haven't felt much difference because I was already here in my own office doing my consulting work. And so, when lockdown came, it didn't make that much of a difference, except he did get a new dog. But anyway, and I've found the same thing. Like, I teach online, I've been working online. And so for me, the only difference would be there's more Zoom time, right? But
I agree.
Zoom allows you to connect with people. It may not be the same as in person, but I think also just keeping an email correspondence going with your colleagues can be very supportive.
Mhm.
And so that's where over the years I've found, people have acted as role models for me. For sure, I couldn't have done it without them. And just being able then to help others and just working on collaborative projects together. Often they're volunteer sorts of things. So volunteer involvement is very important. And so you find other ways of making your connections.
Okay. All right. Great. And as you were talking, I was thinking as well, going back to even as a consultant, writing, do you still write a lot of requests for proposals, or you're beyond that stage now, Gail? People just give you work. How do you balance maybe having a burnout where you spend so much time and energy writing these technical proposals? Sometimes you hear about nothing.
Yeah, I know. Well, a very, very long time ago, I went to a wine and cheese party after work with consultants, business consultants, not evaluators, and I was so depressed because I'd written proposal after proposal, and I wasn't getting the work, and what was I doing wrong, and it was terrible. So I sort of asked this guy, so I'm having trouble getting my proposals. And he said, oh, well, we have like a ratio. So we figure if we get 1 in 5, so we rate 5 proposals, we get 1 project, that we're doing good. So that was his philosophy. So I ran home to my office and I counted how many proposals I had written, compared to how many projects I had got. And my ratio was actually 1 in 3. So I felt fabulous, and I wasn't depressed anymore. So in future after that, I sort of thought, you get sanguine about it. You say, well, I'll do my best on this proposal, but it may not, my number may not be up, because I haven't written enough yet. And so you don't feel so bad when you lose, because you think, well, the next one's going to be for me.
Yes, yes.
So just
Sorry,
just
Gail.
mind games, really.
Yeah, really mind games. I mean, for me, I don't go for everything.
No.
So I'm highly selective of what I respond to. But I know that's the luxury that I have when you have like long-term clients and when you have your business going. So for me, it's not that you're hungry. In the beginning, when I was hungry, I would go for everything. Now I'm far more highly selective, and I think that helps in terms of the response rates of persons getting back favorably. Okay, so Megan asks, what suggestions do you have regarding marketing your consulting services? How do you get potential clients to understand the value of your services?
Gee, I mean, you have to value your services yourself, right? And you have to be very clear on what they are. And then I guess you have to be a personable person that can try to sit down with potential clients and really try to dig deep enough to find out what it is they actually need, and then take it from there. So it's not just a business arrangement, it becomes more of a relationship. And I think that's really important. And then, when you have one good project, it's always a good idea at the end to say, and, if you know of anybody else who might need an evaluator, feel free to use my name. And so certainly I've gotten a lot of work that way through referrals. It's very, very helpful.
Mhm. Great tip. I hope you got that, guys. After every successful evaluation, not the ones they fired you from now, eh?
No.
The successful ones, just say if you know anyone, you can refer my service. I sometimes forget to do that. And I just collect my paycheck and feel good and tick it and move on. But that's something that we shouldn't forget to do. Okay, so Gail, I know you're working on some other interesting things. For example, you're co-authoring an introductory text on program evaluation for Sage Publications. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yes, I am working on a book with a co-author whose name is Beverly Triana Tremaine, and she is an epidemiologist in the United States. And I got into this project with her basically because she was looking for a co-author. And I had never met her. And so we worked together for 6 or 8 months before I actually met her in person. But every week we have, and still do, have a Zoom call to plan the book and work on it. But I've taught program evaluation for so many years now that I had a lot of material and experience, and I had a lot of ways of looking at things that I really wanted to put in writing and to explain to others. And so it's just been a great opportunity. The text it's really a working title. I'm not sure if it'll be the final title, but it's called Evaluation Time, an Introduction to Program Evaluation. And it's going to be published by Sage, hopefully in 2021. Right now I'm working on chapter 10 of 12. So we're nearly there. And it's just been a great experience. So that's been taking a lot of my time. And so I have not been taking on consulting projects because I also teach online at 3 different universities. It sounds like a lot. It's really not. I teach 1 course per term, and each term is at a different university, and it sort of cycles through the year that way, which gives me a real purpose because I'm always in contact with students who are learning about evaluation. And so that keeps me honest, I would say. And plus, it's so much fun to meet them and to get to know them. So that's basically how I'm spending my time these days.
Okay, so if you were not an evaluator or a lecturer in another life, what do you think you would have been? Now I'm curious.
Probably a writer.
Okay. Fiction?
Yep.
Nice, nice, lovely. Okay, but back to reality. I know you have an online training program coming up that maybe you can tell the audience
Yes.
a bit about.
Yes. Well, this is not until next year, but I have been approved for delivering a full-day workshop on it's a consulting boot camp, and it's going to be for the Canadian Evaluation Society the week of May the 4th, because their whole conference is going to be virtual, and the week of May 4th is the week of their workshops. And so I'm doing a workshop at the consulting a boot camp, and it's going to be 2 half days, I think a day or 2 apart, but you could probably find out more about that online. And then I'm also doing a half-day workshop on reflection practice, which is an area, and creativity, which is an area that I'm really interested in.
Okay, great, great. Is there like a cost for this? Can anyone sign up?
Well, I mean, there obviously will be a cost for
Okay.
the workshop, but I think it should be fairly reasonable. And the great news is that you don't actually have to fly there. It was going to be held in Ottawa. Now you don't have to do that. You can just simply do it online.
Okay, all right, great. Guys, if there's any more questions, now is your time before we wrap up. We're almost finished with the webinar, but at this juncture, I would just like to give the last word. Gail, is there anything else you would want to share before we wrap up?
I'm just so thrilled that you've all taken the time to be here today. it's been really great and so rewarding to see from how many countries you come and that you're all interested in being independent consultants. And I would say, go for it. You can do it. Just see yourself in that capacity and make it happen.
Great, great, great. Thank you so very much. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. And I hope it was as informative and interesting for you as it was for me. As I said, I met one of my professional heroes. When I met Gail a few years ago, I was like, if I had a chance to interview anyone and to share experiences, it would be Gail. So I'm happy that after so many years, I was able to see that materialize today. Now, if you need more information, you can always visit Gail's website. I'm trying to bring it up that you can see. So if you, I don't know if you're able to see, I have a PowerPoint here. You can visit her website at www.barringtonresearchgrp.com. And you are seeing also an image of the cover of her book. You can go order it. It will change the way you think and the way you approach business. And also, if you want to be kept up to date with my upcoming webinars or online trainings or other products and services that I have, you can always visit my website at www.annemariebrown.com. Gail, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank
And
you, Anne.
take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.